Okay, we're picking up in 1 Samuel 14, verse 15. And if you remember, Jonathan and his armor bearer, they are just tearing up these Philistines. Just the two of them. But there's a whole garrison there. So, let's see how God steps in on verse 15.
Then panic struck the whole army, those in the camp and field, and those in the outposts and riding parties, and the ground shook. It was a panic sent by God.
So, earthquake! God sends an earthquake at the exact perfect time. So, Israel actually averages a really severe earthquake about every 100 years. 1927 was our last major earthquake. And we're talking major, like California major, something that would really shake things up. So they think Israel's ripe for an earthquake anytime. A big earthquake. They have earthquakes all the time, but a big earthquake.
No.
Anytime. It's been almost 100 years since the last one.
Oh.
So about every 100 years they get a big earthquake. So it's about time. Okay, so back to our story. The Philistines wake up and they're confused. What is going on? And it didn't matter that there were only 2 Israelites who were so outnumbered by the Philistines, and how were they going to kill them all? It didn't matter. God had it. The Israelites had, Jonathan had a sword. His armor bearer wouldn't have had a sword. Didn't matter that the Philistines had lots of weapons. God took care of it. So these Philistines wake up and they think they are being attacked by an army. And they get really confused and they panic and they start killing each other. We've seen that happen before with the story of Gideon. God's doing it again. It's all God. And why is this happening? Because 2 men trusted God and stepped forth against impossible odds. And God acted upon their faith. We don't need big numbers to be victorious. We need a big God. And we have a big God. Okay, verse 16 through 19.
Saul's lookouts in Gibeah of Benjamin saw a strange sight. The vast army of Philistines began to melt away in every direction. Call the roll and find out who's missing, Saul ordered. And when they checked, they found that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. That is far.
Through 19.
Then Saul shouted to Ahijah, "Bring the ephod here," for at that time Ahijah was wearing the ephod in front of the Israelites. But while Saul was talking to the priests, the confusion in the Philistine camp grew louder and louder. So Saul said to the priest, "Never mind, let's get going."
I like the way yours says that. So, in the meantime, Saul and his army that are planning to attack the Philistines sometime, the guards are seeing something strange happen, but they're kind of deciding they don't want to be part of this thing, and they're kind of drifting away. So, Saul's army is just drifting away, deserting. They have no idea that the Philistines are destroying themselves. They don't know what's going on. Saul notices his army is shrinking, and he wants a roll call. Once he gets the roll call, what he's planning to do with it, I don't know. It doesn't say. So they do this roll call, and missing is Jonathan and his armor bearer. So does Dad think they deserted too, or he has no idea where his son is? Not a good parent. Doesn't keep track of his kids at all. He probably thinks his son is a coward. And it's like complete opposite. So my version says they called for the ark, and I know your version said the ephod.
Yeah.
Not sure exactly which one they really did call for, but Saul's probably trying to look spiritual. Let's get God involved in this. But what's he seeking God for? Should we attack the Philistines? What should we do? There's a time to go and pray, and there's a time to act. And get your sword out and fight. Saul works on his time. He's not working on God's time. It's another thing we're learning and experiencing God. When God says to do something, go do it. Don't say, oh, God, how should I do it? Go do it.
Let me pray about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me make sure you really asked me.
With this one, the ark, and that one, the ephod, the priest came with the ark, and the priest was wearing the ephod, so
It could have been
It's
both,
just-
but
blends them together.
yeah. The thing is, he called for the priest, the high priest, who was going to do a sacrifice.
He must have been a little slow.
Now, to be fair, in the last chapter, Saul got in a lot of trouble for rushing in. So maybe he's a little leery this time.
Let's take our time.
But maybe he's overcompensating. But then Saul hears this noise, and it's the Philistines destroying themselves. And as the priest is getting ready to do a sacrifice, he says, oh, wait, no. No, we got to go now. Forget the sacrifice. Let's go. He's saying, like, what the dickens is going on around here? And they decide to Saul decides to get involved. Okay, verse 20 through 23.
Then Saul and all of his men assembled and went to the battle. They found the Philistines in total confusion, striking each other with their swords. Those Hebrews who had previously been with the Philistines and had gone up with them to their camp went over to the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all the Israelites who had hidden in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were on the run, they joined the battle in hot pursuit. So the Lord rescued Israel that day, and the battle moved on beyond Beth-Emen.
Okay, so Saul, the leader of Israel, takes his time leading, but finally he's leading. And there's Jonathan and their armor bearer, and they come up on the scene, and the Philistines are fighting each other. And then it talks about the Hebrews who had been with the Philistines. Now, just who are these Hebrews that were with the Philistines? Were they slaves? Were they mercenaries that decided to join the side with power? We don't know. But when they see the Philistines are not doing well, they decide to join the Israelites. So they decide to join the current winning team. If they are mercenaries, then they are not faithful to anybody. They just want to be on the winning side. And they don't understand God. With God, you're always on the winning side. There may be times where it seems like, oh, things are against us, but God is for us. So, okay, remember back last chapter, after the battle, a bunch of Israelites had gone and hid in caves. Apparently they had stayed in those caves, and now they come out of the woodworks. So Israelites everywhere, the ones who had been afraid, they're in this fight now. And remember, they don't have swords. They have plowshares and scythes, however you say that, axes and things like that. And the Philistine army is well equipped. But one of the things they're well equipped with are chariots. But where they're at, chariots don't work well. It's a really hilly, rocky area. So that kind of negates some of the advantage they had. Now, God had really used Jonathan in this victory, but it wasn't Jonathan's victory. It was God's victory. God was just waiting for someone with bold faith, and he poured himself into Jonathan and his armor bearer, which is still, we don't know his name. And I think we should give the armor bearer a name, because we're going to call him Fred. Fred the armor bearer, because man, he is so. He's right there with Jonathan, and Jonathan's got the sword, and he doesn't. But he's right there with him, fighting everything. You know, are we armor bearers? Are we willing to go in the fight and support?
Well, Ephesians 6 tells us to put on the whole armor of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, verse 24. Is Betty?
And how far?
Just 24.
Just 24?
Mm-hmm.
Now the men of Israel were hard pressed on that day, for Saul had put the people under oath, saying, "Cursed be the man who eats food before evening, and until I have avenged myself on my enemies." So none of the people tasted food.
What a stupid, idiotic thing to do. I mean, he's so confident of his victory, even though Jonathan's the one that really struck the big blow. Now it's mopping up and killing the remaining of the Philistines, who are probably now hiding in the caves that they vacated. But they are tired. They're exhausted. They've been fighting, and they are hungry. But Saul doesn't want any more desertions. On the surface, it sounds like he's kind of spiritual. Let's set aside this special day and honor the Lord by not eating.
Not when you're in battle.
His focus is so wrong. And he puts the people under a curse. Now, one thing that no one mentioned is he puts them under a curse. I don't see anywhere where they actually take a vow, but he puts them under a curse. And they take that seriously, and they don't eat. And cursing was really a spiritual thing. If God had wanted him to curse people, God would have told him somehow, curse people. But this is stupid. He could have called for a voluntary fast and said, let's honor God and fast, although it's still not the right time to do that. But no, he's just decided we're not going to eat. And we can see these guys are not too happy about this forced fast. Obviously, Saul is not a great motivational speaker that gets them riled up and let's take one for the Gipper type speech. No, they're not happy about it. When the army needed to be its strongest, they're denied food. And I don't know about you, when I'm gonna do something physical, I need food. Athletes, I've heard about people that are weightlifters and things. They eat a humongous amount of food. Your body needs food to produce energy. Well, if you don't have food, you don't have energy. So that's what Saul's doing to these guys. And all of this took the focus off of God. But they are obeying the oath. Okay, this is a chunk of reading, verse 25 through 30.
Excuse me, just lost my place.
Oh.
Okay, everyone went into the forest, and there was honey on the ground. When the troops entered the forest, they saw the flow of honey, but none of them ate any of it because they feared the oath. However, Jonathan had not heard his father make the troops wear the oath. He reached out with the end of the staff he was carrying and dropped it into the honeycomb. When he ate the honey, he had renewed energy. Then one of the troops said, "Your father made the troops solemnly swear, the man who eats food today is cursed," and the troops are exhausted. How far did you
20 to through 30, sorry.
do? 30?
Yeah.
Jonathan replied, "My father has brought trouble to the land. Just look at how I have renewed energy, because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better if the troops had eaten freely today from the plunder they took from their enemies. Then the slaughter of the Philistines would have been much greater."
Okay, where did this honey come from?
Some tree.
Actually, wild. It's something that does occur in Israel. Wild honey. But was it a coincidence that it happened right then, right there? Did God bring it there? Was He trying to get these people cursed and in trouble with their king? They were tired and hungry. Some people would say Satan put it there to tempt them.
Couldn't that guy tell him before he ate it? That there was a
As they were
curse?
seeing. Normally, that would have been a great energy source. You know, get sugar, natural sugar in your body, energy, and they need that energy because they're a moving army. They are chasing Philistines. They need energy. This honey contains about 35% protein, and B, C, D, and E vitamins. So it's a great food. It promotes energy and healing.
But you can't give it to babies. But I wonder what, with all that protein.
The allergies.
Yeah. Okay, but they needed energy, and there it was. But they don't touch it. So when these soldiers see this honey, what do you think's going through their minds?
Oh, what in the world did God do to us?
Yeah.
It'd been better if it was. They probably said it would have been better if it hadn't been there.
And okay, so Jonathan comes along, and he sees this honey, and he hasn't heard of this oath, and so he gets some honey, and everyone goes, "Oh, you're cursed, dude." And Jonathan says, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life." Look at it says his eyes brightened because he ate this. And he's saying, your eyes could brighten too. Now, some people would say Satan used Jonathan to tempt them, but now Jonathan is not exactly honoring his father nor his king at this moment. He's kind of undercutting his dad's authority. He should have talked to dad. But he's not wrong. This curse thing is marring their victory. They could have had caught up with those guys so much easier if they had energy. But that got that oath on them. And where's Saul at this point?
Probably eating some dinner. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, verse 31 through 35.
They struck down the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon, and the people were very faint. The people pounced on the spoil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slaughtered them on the ground, and the people ate them with the blood. Then they told Saul, "Behold, the people are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood." And he said, "You have dealt treacherously. Roll a great stone to me here." And Saul said, "Disperse yourselves among the people, and say to them, let every man bring his ox or his sheep and slaughter them here and eat, and do not sin against the Lord by eating with the blood." So every one of those people brought his ox with him that night, and they slaughtered them there.
Through 35.
And Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar that he built to the Lord.
Okay, back in Deuteronomy 12, one of the commands of God was do not eat an animal's blood. Drain that animal. But these guys are so desperately hungry. I almost imagine like zombie movie where they're just pouncing on these animals, these poor animals. Apparently, because Saul doesn't mention anything about the curse, this must have happened after twilight. Must have been the evening. He must have said, we can eat now, let's go. So Saul's foolish oath led them to disobey a command that was directly from God. Which one's worse? Have a curse from Saul or disobey God? And Saul blames the people for something that was his own fault. One of the things we're going to see from Saul is he is really good at passing the buck. So here's passing the buck time when it's the people's fault. They're in sin. Didn't matter that he provoked them to sin. Saul says, stop, don't do this. Bring the animals here, let's drain them and you can eat them. Let's do this the right way. Has a stone set up so they can butcher the animals and build an altar to the Lord. At least he's building the altar to the right person for once.
That's the first one you ever did, though, isn't
Yeah. Now, he doesn't talk to God about this. Because in Deuteronomy 12, it says, be careful that you do not offer your burnt offerings in every cultic place you see, but in the place which the Lord chooses. We don't see anything about God telling him, do this here. And it doesn't say anything about asking God's forgiveness for this sin. And where is Samuel in all this?
Yeah.
We don't hear anything from him during this time. Saul should have been consulting Samuel on things, and he just kept doing things his own way. But Samuel was the one who had the connection to God and God's voice, and Saul just doesn't seem to want to hear it.
Yeah.
Verse 36 through 39.
Saul said, let's go down after the Philistines tonight and plunder them until morning. Don't let even one remain. Do whatever you want, the troops replied. But the priest said, we must consult God here. So Saul inquired of God, should I go after the Philistines? Will you hand them over to Israel? But God did not answer him that day. Saul said, all you leaders of the troops come here. Excuse me. Let us investigate how this sin has occurred today. As surely as the Lord lives, who saves Israel, even if it is because of my son Jonathan, he must die. Not one of the troops answered him.
Okay, just getting worse, worse and worse. But at least Saul asks God this time, but he doesn't wait for the answer. Another experiencing the God thing. Wait. When God tells you something, do it. But if he doesn't tell you something, wait for his answer. So if he had only started off with asking God, but no, he's kind of in the middle of this thing. So he asks of God, and God doesn't answer Saul that day. Saul figures it's because there's sin in the camp. Well, there is, but not the sin he thinks.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's the sin that someone ate when they had this oath. Of course, he didn't do anything wrong.
He wasn't.
More passing the buck. He was so sure he was right that he had pronounced another oath. Whoever ate, even if it's his son, they're gonna die. The soldiers know that Jonathan is the one who ate. And they're not happy because Jonathan has the respect of the soldiers. So no one's telling Saul, it was your kid. But Saul has another way. Verse 40 through 42.
Then he said to all Israel, "You shall be on one side, and I and Jonathan my son will be on the other side." And the people said to Saul, "Do you do what seems good to you?" Therefore Saul said, "O Lord, God of Israel, why have you not answered your servant this day? If this guilt is in me or in Jonathan my son, O Lord, God of Israel, give Urim.
Yeah.
But if this guilt is in your people Israel, give Thummim." And Jonathan and Saul were taken, but the people escaped. Then Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and my son Jonathan," and Jonathan was taken.
Okay, so they used the Urim and Thummim to determine who, and you got all of Israel on one side and Saul and Jonathan on the other side. Well, that didn't take long to weed that out. These guys, all of these guys, not them. It's falling to Jonathan and Saul. And Saul realizes when Jonathan is the one that he's cast a death sentence on his son. He's not his only son, but he is the one that is to become the king. Remember back in Deuteronomy, I think it was, God had given a way out of foolish oaths. Saul should have taken advantage of that. Samuel would have known about being able to reverse a foolish oath, but Samuel's not around. And now Saul swears a personal oath that Jonathan must die.
And you know, that oath, because later on Jonathan did die.
Yes, he does.
He pronounced that
Yeah.
already for him.
Yeah. Okay, 45 and 46.
So the people said to Saul, "Shall Jonathan die, who has accomplished this great deliverance in Israel? Certainly not. As the Lord lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day." So the people rescued Jonathan, and he did not die. Then Saul returned to pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place.
So these soldiers, again, they love Jonathan. They are not going to let this happen to Jonathan. They know it's not right. And they ransom Jonathan. It doesn't say how they ransom him. But they arranged to spare Jonathan's life, even though he broke the oath. Well, one, he didn't know about the oath, and two, the oath was stupid.
Well, and it says they just, if he says it, this tip of the staff, how much
Yeah,
honey did he get on that? Just,
yeah,
Unless he had a spoon on
yeah,
just enough to make his eyes bright.
yeah.
I've really been hungry. I've been up with.
Yeah. And so it says after that the Philistines went home.
Yeah.
Well, the implication is the victory would have been a much greater victory if Saul hadn't done that stupid oath in the first place. They would have had the energy to go pursue the Philistines. And now the Philistines are not destroyed, and they're still around, and they are going to be trouble.
And they're still
Country.
around, and there's still trouble.
Yeah.
Never go away. No, I don't.
Okay, so this part is an interesting part, 47 through 52. This is kind of a section by itself.
When Saul assumed the kingship over Israel, he fought against all his enemies in every direction, even Moab and the Ammonites Edom, and the kings of Zoan, and the Philistines. Wherever he turned, he caused havoc. He fought bravely, defeated the Amalekites, and delivered Israel from the hand of those who plundered them. Saul's sons were Jonathan, Ishab, and
Yeah, that name.
The names of his two daughters were Merab, her firstborn, and Michael, the younger. The name of Saul's wife was, you would give me this one?
I would, yeah, all the names.
Yeah, okay, daughter of,
Yeah, that guy.
the names of the commander of his army were Abner, son of Saul's uncle Ner. Saul's father was Kish. Abner's father was Ner's son of Abel. The conflict with the Philistines was so fierce all of Saul's day, so whenever Saul noticed any strong or brave man, he enlisted him.
Okay, so why is this section stuck in here? It shows us Saul's strength. It shows us he was a mighty warrior. We just saw a thing where he held back, but he had fought a lot of wars, a lot of battles, and they had won a lot of battles, which was something Israel hadn't been doing. It talks about how he recruited a lot of strong men into his army. He had a large, influential family, and he expanded Israel, their borders, in all directions. Now, the list of his family members, in 1 Samuel 31, we have a different list. We get some more sons, and so sometimes when we get these lists, it only includes the people they think are important at the time. We didn't get Mephibosheth in here. We will see Mephibosheth. That's another son, but
It's another
and
son
another-
of Saul
or
Jonathan.
of Saul.
Saul.
Yeah. He had and another son, Armoni, but they were sons of a concubine. So that's another thing, they were not sons of his wife. But we know that Saul was not a man after God's own heart. And he had already been told a couple times that his kingship would not last, would not be eternal. Okay, 1 Samuel 15. In this chapter, pay close attention to the pronouns used, whether it's we, I, you, them. That's important. Okay, so we haven't seen Samuel since chapter 13. So now he's back, verse 1 through 3.
Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys.
Okay, so there may have been a gap of a few years in here. They're not sure the timeline of when this happened. But Samuel starts off reminding Saul why he's king. He's king because God allowed him to be king. God chose him to be king for this time.
Yeah.
This is a message from the spiritual leader to the political and military leader. So, any question on what he's supposed to do? Is that pretty clear?
Take care of them.
They're to punish Amalek for what they had done. Now, what had Amalek done? When the Israelites were traveling through the wilderness, when the Israelites were traveling through the wilderness with Moses, the Amalekites would come and attack the weakest people and just slaughter them and take everything they had. They were not nice people at all. utterly destroyed is used 7 times in this story. What are they to utterly destroy?
Everything.
Men, women, children, infants, all the animals. Basically, if it breathed, kill it. Back in Deuteronomy 17, God had told Moses that the Amalekites would be blotted from under heaven. I think I said Ammonites earlier. Amalekites. He told Moses that back in 1446 BC, and now it's about 1010 BC, so 400 years later.
You're still around?
Are they, 400 years? But what if it's, just a gorgeous goat? or beautiful woman? Or
A
baby. Oh, cute little baby with big eyes. And what did God say? Everything. So it's a good time to talk about God and war. When is war justified? Pacifists would say never. But there's another theory called the just war theory, where basically war is just if life is being desacralized. So think about World War II and Hitler and what he was doing, not just to the Jews, but disabled or anyone that was not a perfect Aryan, which, did you know Aryans are really African? That's where they came from. But to protect all those people, that would be a just war. A war to expand your land, not a just war in these people's eyes. So God is trying, these Amalekites do not respect life. Think of them as a cross between Al-Qaeda and pornography. There's nothing redeeming about these people. So God says, I want them wiped out. And the children, yes, because they will grow up. And again, in their culture, if someone killed your family, you were honor bound to revenge your family, avenge your family. Yeah. So if you left those children alive because they're just so cute, even a baby, they were honor bound to fight against you. Now, they'd already had one battle against the Amalekites. This was a battle that they won as long as Moses' arms were held up. That they fought the Amalekites back then. The Amalekites were descended from Esau, Jacob's brother. Now, God could have judged Amalek the same way he did Sodom and Gomorrah. He could have just wiped them out, but he wanted to use God's people. And it's kind of a test for Saul. Also, the sin that God wants the Amalekites punished for was because they were fighting and attacking the Israelite convoy back 400 years earlier. So he wanted them punished through war. Verse 4 through 6.
So Saul summoned the people and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 men on foot and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the valley of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. Then Saul said to the Kenites, depart, go down from the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the people of Israel when they came out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites.
So one thing that Saul seems pretty good at is gathering a big army, keeping them, another story. he also knew it was the time to attack them, or it wasn't quite time to attack them. They were spying on them, laying in wait. So we see that he warns the Kenites to get out of there. The Kenites were a group of Midianites. If you remember back when the Israelites were leaving Mount Sinai, Moses said to a Kenite from the tribe of Midian, come with us, you know the roads and everything, and he apparently brought a whole group with him. And they settled in Israel. And so Saul is saying, get out of there, we're going to attack, and we don't want to hurt you. If you're there, we're going to hurt you. It's kind of like Israel right now warning Palestine, we're going to bomb you, get out of there. So same kind of idea. They're giving warnings. So they have a history of doing that. Now the Midianites, these Kenites, apparently never convert to Judaism. But they are still related, and they still did a kindness to the Israelites.
Oh, Moses' father-in-law.
Yeah, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, was a Midianite, so it's from that group of people. Okay, verse 7 through 9 says, and Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fatted calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless they devoted to destruction. See a problem here?
Yeah. He already disobeyed right there.
Yeah. He was obedient to attack, but it was selective, incomplete obedience, which is disobedience. You can't have partial obedience. Either obey or not. He didn't kill Agag. They didn't kill all the animals, and they actually didn't kill all the people either. Why didn't he kill Agag? We aren't told here, but Josephus says it was because Agag was such a good guy. And really good looking and tall, kind of sounds like Saul. But it's also possible and probable that at that time kings usually didn't kill kings, because if you kept the king alive, if that king came and attacked you, he would keep you alive. So it was kind of like a buddy deal. So
Compromise.
yeah,
Then they cut off their thumbs.
they would cut off their thumbs and stuff like that to really embarrass them.
They couldn't use what? They couldn't use their weapon without...
You can't use your weapons without your thumbs, because you can't, how do you hold a shield with no thumb? God had told him to get rid of...
How important that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, holding anything.
Yeah.
You need a thing.
God had told him to get rid of Agag. Is there an Agag in your life that God told you to get rid of and you're kind of hanging on to? Yeah. So in a normal war, the soldiers were allowed to plunder and take the best of things, and you could do pretty well with plunder.
Excuse me, Audrey, is
Yeah.
any war normal?
What?
Is any war normal?
Any war normal? I would hope not. Just a just war.
Yeah.
But, again, like World War II, on the Nazi side, it was not a just war. But on the Axis side, to stop him, that was what I would consider a just war, and to save people. Wars for expansion, which was what Hitler was doing, what Japan was doing, they were trying to expand. That's not just, but to save people. Okay, so yeah, their normal war, you plundered, but God said no plunder this time. He didn't want anyone benefiting from wiping out these Amalekites. This was a judgment from God. Wipe it all out. It's kind of like a hangman emptying the pockets of the person he's going to hang. Leave it alone. But notice it's also the people decide not to destroy everything and keep the best of the livestock. You can imagine they're pretty happy. There's probably pretty good stuff. Yeah. Brian Bell says, the best of, really, if the Lord says something is condemned, how can you say it's the best? And even if they're planning to sacrifice all this, which they say they're planning to do, are they really?
Well, I'll just keep that one for later.
Yeah, I need to sacrifice that in like 10 years. It's still disobedience, because that's not what God said. He didn't say, come sacrifice these animals to me. He said, destroy them all. And notice it said they kept anything that was worthless, they destroyed that. So again, so wrong. Again, partial obedience is disobedience. Okay, verse 10.
Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, that was
Oh, sorry, 11 too. Yeah, that was 10.
I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not carried out my commands. And Samuel was distressed and cried out to the Lord all night.
Okay, was God saying he made a mistake? Does God make a mistake?
No.
Ever? He is saying he is sad that this man who had such promise has gone so far. It's sorrow. And of course, God knew it was going to happen. But still, when it's happening, it's sad to see.
It makes you understand, God could, with a snap of a finger, have done it.
Mm-hmm.
But he leaves it to us to follow his instructions where we fail him so often.
Yeah.
Make a choice. He leaves it to us to make the choice. And we fail it. So
Obedience.
Yeah. So this man who had started off humble, hiding behind luggage,
False
he's now power hungry.
So they didn't ask God at all. Then they talked to God. Somebody did, and then they don't follow through. They follow him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they had good intentions.
So God did not change his mind. The Life Application Bible says he changed his attitude towards Saul. Saul's heart no longer belongs to God. And Samuel's heart is broken. He's so sad to see this rejection of God.
This version says Samuel was angry.
Yeah, yeah,
Angry.
yeah. All this potential gone to waste. Now God already knew Saul's heart, and he knew his ways, and he knew the destiny from the beginning. Like last week the pastor said, God knows us better than we know ourselves. So he already knew it all.
Oh, yes.
But it's still that potential, that completely wasted potential. And Samuel, of course, didn't have foreknowledge, so he didn't know all this was going to happen, and it breaks his heart too. We're close to God when the things that grieve God's heart grieve us too. And the things that please God please us. But so often, that's not where we're at. But that should be our goal. God, what grieves you and what pleases you? So we are going to stop there. Time just flew.
Oh, that's interesting.